Breastfeeding has been a cornerstone of infant care for centuries, but did you know the way we view and practice breastfeeding has changed dramatically over time? From ancient traditions to modern innovations, the history of breastfeeding is as fascinating as it is complex. In today's video, we'll explore how breastfeeding practices have evolved through the ages and what we can learn from the past. Let's dive in. Let's start at the very beginning. Ancient civilizations. Breastfeeding was not just a maternal duty, it was a societal norm deeply rooted in survival. In ancient Egypt, for example, depictions of breastfeeding can be found in art, showing its sacred importance. Wet nurses were common, particularly for royalty and wealthy families. These women were tasked with feeding children when their biological mothers couldn't or chose not to breastfeed. Meanwhile, in ancient Greece and Rome, breastfeeding was celebrated in mythology and literature. The goddess Hera breastfeeding Hercules is one of the most iconic examples, symbolizing nourishment and strength. Fast forward to the Middle Ages, and we see breastfeeding becoming more institutionalized. Wet nursing was a well-established practice, especially among the European aristocracy. Mothers from noble families often relied on wet nurses to feed their children, allowing them to focus on societal duties. Wet nursing wasn't just a profession, it was a vital service for families. But this period also saw cultural stigmas start to emerge. Some religious groups began associating breastfeeding with modesty concerns, which influenced whether mothers nursed their own children. Now, let's move to the Industrial Revolution, a period that drastically changed the landscape of breastfeeding. As more women entered the workforce, breastfeeding rates declined. The rise of infant formula in the late 19th century offered an alternative for working mothers, but it also marked a turning point in how breastfeeding was perceived. Formula feeding was marketed as modern and scientific, which led to a stigma around breastfeeding in some communities. By the mid-20th century, breastfeeding rates reached an all-time low in many industrialized countries. Fortunately, the 1970s and 80s saw a resurgence in breastfeeding awareness, thanks in part to global health organizations like the World Health Organization and UNICEF. They promoted the benefits of breastfeeding and its importance for both mother and baby. This era also saw the rise of lactation consultants and support groups like La Leche League, which empowered mothers to breastfeed and provided much-needed guidance. Today, breastfeeding is widely recognized as the gold standard for infant nutrition, but it's also about personal choice and access. Modern technology has given us tools like breast pumps and milk banks, making breastfeeding more accessible than ever. At the same time, cultural attitudes continue to evolve. Breastfeeding in public is increasingly accepted, but challenges remain. Looking to the future, innovations like lactation-enhancing supplements and advanced breast pumps are reshaping how we approach infant care. So, what can we learn from the history of breastfeeding? One thing is clear, breastfeeding has always been about adaptation. From ancient traditions to modern science, it reflects the needs and values of the times. But at its core, it's a deeply personal and powerful act that connects mother and child. Whether you're a breastfeeding parent or simply curious about its history, understanding how far we've come can inspire us to support every mother's journey, whatever that may look like. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey through time. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and share it with anyone who might find it interesting. And of course, hit that subscribe button for more fascinating insights into parenting, history, and beyond. Got questions or thoughts about the history of breastfeeding? Drop them in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. Until next time, take care and keep learning.